All right, everybody. Welcome back to Horn Takes, episode 30. Tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about Texas baseball. Oh, by the way, we're streaming live. I'm on my third streaming platform. I have no idea which one I like. They all have pros and cons, so I'm just trying a bunch of different kinds. So hopefully this one has a little bit better quality. That's what I've been a little upset about lately, is the quality. So if you're watching on YouTube or you're watching on Facebook, let me know what you think of the quality. Hopefully the video and the audio is in sync. That's been another problem. I don't know. We'll see. So tonight we're going to talk about Texas baseball. We're going to talk about Texas basketball. And we're going to talk about what I think about Steve Sarkisian. Got Tom Herman on the mind. I don't know why. And then we'll have a little bonus recruiting tidbit. So Texas baseball alumni game was this weekend. And it was basically a inter-squad scrimmage from last year's team. Most of the guys that played for the alumni team were guys that played on the baseball team last year, which stands to reason because Texas baseball, we've talked about it before, they've lost 2/3 of their rotation on the pitching staff. They've lost 2/3 of the lineup out in the field and in the hitting order. So it's going to be a pretty interesting year. So I got to watch a little bit of the alumni game this weekend. It ended up being a 4-4 tie. So not much eventful there. But we did kind of get to see what the lineup might look like going into the season. One of the question marks I had was, obviously we got to replace 6 guys in the lineup. And there was really 3 guys that were coming back that had a lot of experience from last year. And then there was a couple of guys that played a little bit last year, but weren't a huge part of the team last year. And so what we got to see was the lineup, I think, if I had to guess, is going to look a little bit like this. And one thing we noted was that it's going to be obviously a very new team. You lose 2/3 of the lineup. You lose 2/3 of the pitching staff. And not the whole pitching staff, the starting rotation. You lose that many guys, you're going to have a lot of new faces. Well, there are a lot of new faces on this team, but I think with a couple of exceptions, there's some pretty decent experience. There's some guys that have played at other places and guys that have been with the program for a while. And like I said, those 3 guys that are coming back have all played a significant amount of baseball at the University of Texas. So what the lineup appears to look like is it looks like you're going to have Dylan Campbell, who's a junior, out in right field. Dylan Campbell really came on last year from the plate and showed some really good power numbers. He's a guy that can play all the outfield positions, and he's played third base before. But I think they're going to stick with him at right field. Eric Kennedy is a super-duper senior. You hear about super seniors and redshirt seniors, and this guy has been with the program for like 6 years now. He's going to end up, it looks like, out in center field. And then Porter Brown's a transfer from TCU. He's a junior. I don't know how much he played at TCU, but it looks like he's going to wind up playing out in the left field. And then in the infield is where you see a mix of experience and some new guys. Jared Thomas is a freshman. He played a lot of first base in that alumni game. I don't know much about him, except he's a freshman, and he played a lot of first base in that alumni game. Then you got Jack O'Dowd, who's a junior. He's a transfer from Vanderbilt. Looks like he's going to land at second base. And then Mitchell Daly is a junior who's played second base his whole career at Texas, but he's going to move over into the shortstop position. And then Jalen Flores, a freshman third baseman. The catchers, I'm not 100% sure. It looks like a guy named Garrett Guillemette Jr. He's a junior. It looked like he started the game for the Texas roster, the Texas half of the game. And then another catcher started on the other side. So I don't know really what will happen there. Garrett Guillemette is, I believe, a transfer from USC. So who knows? We'll see what happens there. The pitching staff, it looks like maybe could be Zane Morehouse, who's a junior, could be your Friday guy. Lucas Gordon is a junior, could be your Saturday guy. And then Charlie Hurley is a junior transfer. I believe he's from USC as well. He could be the Sunday guy. Zane and Lucas Gordon have both been at Texas at least since last year. So again, we didn't garner a whole lot from that alumni game, except that it looks like while the team will be pretty new, there is some experience. As we said, David Pierce brought in quite a bit of transfer guys. So and that pitching staff stuff, who knows what will happen there? I think they'll probably take the first. They'll obviously come in with an idea what they want to do with the rotation, and then they'll spend the next few weeks really figuring out who they're going to pitch. There's midweek games. Usually go to the younger guys, but there's a lot of sort of experience in this bullpen, a lot of older guys in this bullpen. So we'll see how that goes. Really big topic right now, Texas basketball. Just a really tough stretch of 4 games for them. They went on the road to Tennessee in the SEC Big 12 showdown. Didn't obviously fare that well. I think they lost by 11 to Tennessee. They had chances to get themselves back in that game, but just couldn't quite do it. And as anybody that watches college basketball knows, winning on the road is really tough. So they had that top 10 matchup on the road. Then they played who'd they play? Iowa State, I believe. Took a win from Iowa State. And then they played Kansas State, who absolutely wrecked shop on Texas the last time they played up in Manhattan. Actually, down in Austin, it was 116 to 103. So imagine in a college game. I don't know if I've ever seen 2 teams score in triple digits in a college game, and I certainly have never seen that one of the teams score triple digits and lose the game. And not only lose the game by double digits. So just a really poor defensive effort. And also give Kansas State credit in that first game. They couldn't miss anything. They were burying threes. But basically anything they shot fell. So Texas goes on the road to Kansas State for the third game of this fourth game. 4 games in a row, 4-game stretch against some really, really tough competition. They started off really slow. They got down at halftime. They were down by 11. Just a lot of turnovers in the first half. One thing I've noticed, and this happened the last couple games with Texas, it happened against Kansas State, it happened against KU. They start off and they just cannot hold on to the ball. In fact, last night I said it multiple times. I have never seen a basketball team that cannot hold the ball the way Texas cannot hold the ball. And I'm talking about just catching the ball and holding on to the ball. I'm talking passes, rebounds, loose balls. They just cannot seem to catch it once. So there was a ton of turnovers at the beginning of both of those games. The shooting in that Kansas State game in the first half was pretty terrible. 30% from the field, 11% from the three-point. At one point, they missed 4 layups in a row, and I'm talking like point blank. Absolutely, you shouldn't miss layups. Obviously, they were contested shots, but, man, you just can't miss layups. If you get in that close, you can't miss it. So, anyway, in the Kansas State game, they trailed by 11 at half. And I got to be honest, I'm thinking to myself, man, this game is over. There's no way they're coming back from this. It's kind of the same old deal. Then the second half rolls around, and I don't know what Rodney Terry said to those guys necessarily. I've seen a couple clips, some inspiring talk from Rodney Terry about, why not them, why not now. But they came out in the second half and played a really, really good second half. And I thought the key to the second half of that Kansas State game was them getting the ball down low to Christian Bishop. Christian Bishop, I don't know why. I don't know what it was about this particular game, but when he got the ball down low, he was on a mission, and he was going to score, and he did score, and he scored a lot in that second half. And they did that, and that's what got him back into the game. Then they kind of moved away from it, and Kansas State was able to get themselves back into the game, because at that point, Texas had not only chewed into the lead and erased it, they had sort of built their own smaller lead. They quit going through Bishop, and Kansas State was able to get back in the game. Ultimately, they were just too much for Kansas State. They're late. Bishop and Rice led the Longhorns with 14 apiece. Carr, Hunter, and Allen each had 10 points. So you're talking 3 of your 4 guards with double digits. So it was a really good road win, especially after the loss at home earlier in the season. and then coming off of their last road game where they just didn't look all that great against Tennessee. By the way, anytime this Texas team loses, it's the same story. They get really reckless with the ball. They hurry. I know they want to run. I know that they want to capitalize off of turnovers by getting down the court quick and taking advantage of the defense being behind. I get it, but sometimes this team just gets really wildly out of control. And I think it really all starts with Marcus Carr. Now, Marcus Carr is one of those guys where sometimes you just got to take the bad with the good, because when he's on fire, Marcus Carr is tough. You can't guard him. He's not going to miss. And he's got the confidence to just keep shooting and shooting and shooting and shooting. So the other side of that, though, is once he makes a shot, he thinks he can make every shot. And once he drives and gets a layup, he thinks he can drive and get a layup. And a lot of times he just gets really out of control, turns the ball over. That takes me to this Kansas game. They had obviously a big road test. After the Kansas State game, they traveled to Lawrence to play KU, who I believe at the time was ranked 8th. They'll certainly move up. Ended up dropping that game 88-80. Now, again, they were down big in the first half. They started off terrible in the first half. Really, really sloppy game. Just I don't know what it is. I think the team is almost too amped up coming into these games, and they just can't not make mistakes. They miss tons of shots. They miss open layups. They just can't pull down rebounds, can't catch passes. I mean, again, last night was like the most amazing thing I've ever seen in terms of a basketball team not being able to catch the ball. But they had tons of turnovers in this game. I don't think they got the ball into Bishop enough. I think Bishop got himself into foul trouble, especially late. But they just didn't make an effort to get the ball down low to him, which is odd to me because every time Dylan Dessou is in the game, who's another big guy for Texas, a transfer from Vanderbilt, led the SEC in rebounds his freshman year, I believe. They always try to get the ball down low to Dylan Dessou. I mean, they make it a point. And just offensively, his game is not anywhere near Christian Bishop's. So last night was just kind of one of those deals where Texas got down again, and they seem to do that a lot in these high, these big matchups with highly rated teams. They get themselves down, and then they find a way to storm back. And you thought last night, I mean, they got within 2. I think they actually tied the game with KU. And at that point, I'm sitting there going, man, are they really going to do this again? And then they would go on these little stretches where they would just turn the ball over like 2 or 3 times in a row. And the lead would go from, 0 or 2 for Kansas to 8 or 10, like in seconds. Like you got up and went to the refrigerator, grabbed yourself something to drink, came and sat back down. And you're like, what the hell? I just left and it was a tie ball game. That happened a couple times in this KU game. And I really think the story of this KU game was just too many easy baskets for Kansas. Kansas scored 50 points in the paint, 24 points off of fast breaks, and 18 points off of turnovers. And you just can't let a team be in the paint and score like that inside the paint and expect to win the ball game. The crazy thing about this game was KU's leading guy just didn't do anything. I think he had 4 points total on the night, but they got so many points from other people. The guards for KU really took advantage of the space Texas gave them. They were able to blow by the Texas guards and get a lot of easy baskets. When the big guys down low would rotate over to help, they always left their guy wide open. Those point guards and those guards would get the ball to those big guys, and a lot of easy buckets, a lot of easy slams. Definitely a game I think Texas feels like they absolutely should have won, and they just didn't. And again, that's the way it goes on the road. The crowd was definitely into that one. I've never been to that place, but it looks like it's very rowdy, very good time, very fun to be at. And they were definitely into this game. You saw horns down from the second the broadcast started. until the game was over, and definitely that crowd was into it. So a tough loss there, but they split 2-2 out of a 4-game stretch that I personally felt like 1-3 would be good during that stretch. So to go 2-2 and again really have really feel like you let the last one slip away, and I think KU's a really good basketball team, but I think Texas is a better basketball team. They just didn't play better last night. So it'll be interesting to see how that one goes down in Austin when they get to play down in Austin in a little bit. One thing I wanted to talk about this basketball team is I've been down on them. They've in a lot of the bigger games they haven't played well, but also in a lot of those bigger games they haven't played well, but they found ways to win the game. And I think that just goes back to the experience. There's a lot of older kids on this team. A lot of guys that have played a lot of basketball on this team. And if they could just clean up the mistakes, man, they would be really hard to beat. But Rodney Terry has done a really outstanding job since being named the interim head coach at Texas when Chris Beard was fired. There's a lot of conversation right now about, should Texas just go ahead and hire Rodney Terry? Should they go ahead and pull the trigger and give him a contract? I personally feel like it's too early for that, and it has nothing to do with him. I think he's doing a really great job. I think the players respond to him. He's obviously a really good recruiter. I don't know, but I've been told that, Chris Beard basically turned the defense over to him when he brought him back to Texas and said, you coach the defense, which seems odd to me because Beard is pretty clearly a defensive mindseted guy. So, but let's assume that's true. So obviously, a lot of times the Texas defense is really good. It's not good all the time, but so I don't think it's time to give him a contract today, but I think he could do some things. I mean, if that guy continues the way he's continuing right now and they do well enough in the Big 12 tournament, let's say Texas wins the Big 12 regular season and does fairly well in the tournament. And then obviously, they're going to get into the NCAA tournament. Let's say they wind up in a Sweet 16 type position. I got to think it's a tough call for CDC to say, man, I'm not gonna hire this guy. I'm still looking for a better candidate. So I don't know. I obviously don't know what Chris Del Conte is thinking about any of this, and I don't get to make any of these decisions, and nobody's going to ask me. But that's my thoughts on Rodney Terry. I'll tell you this, though. I don't know how they do interim contracts, but I hope that they are compensating him very well because he's doing an outstanding. You got to think about where this team was probably emotionally and mentally when all that mess about Chris Beard came out. And he's been able to take this group of guys and just push forward through all that, and not only that, but push forward through playing really good basketball in a really, really tough basketball conference. And then when they're out of conference, they're playing really good teams as well. So kudos to Rodney Terry. We'll see how they do the rest of the season. I'm pulling for him. I hope – obviously there's bigger names out there, but I hope that if he performs to a level that Texas wants their basketball team to be at, which I feel like, again, competing for Big 12 titles, competing well in the Big 12 tournament, being in the sort of the top half, top 33% of the NCAA tournament when it's all said and done. Those are the types of things that you want to consistently see out of your basketball program. If he can do that this year, I think they got to give him a really tough look. Let's switch gears. Let's talk about what I think. So somebody asked me on TikTok the other day what I think about Steve Sarkisian. And this is like a really loaded topic because there's all kinds of stuff you can think about Steve Sarkisian in a whole bunch of different ways. So let me just lay it all out there. Obviously, he's heading into his third season at Texas. He's had two really, really good recruiting classes in a row. I don't count that first cycle that he was the head coach against him or for him, and it wasn't bad. I think they were 15 or something like that. The year that Steve Sarkisian came in, So a really good class. But as he's had time to be here and actually recruit folks and work with his staff on recruiting, he's been lights out. And not just from a star perspective. He's been lights out from a filling the needs on the team perspective. All that being said, if you're looking at the football program and the results on the football field, Steve Sarkisian is still a mixed bag for me. I really like his pedigree. I think a guy that's coached for Nick Saban and a guy that's coached for Pete Carroll and held really high positions on those coaching staffs for Nick Saban and Pete Carroll. I think you gotta like that. He's obviously, I think if you look at, Kirby Smart's starting to creep up there, but if you look at, the last 20 years, those are the two guys that were there and were kind of like leading what we would call dynasties. Obviously, it's kind of crazy. This brings up another point that I just thought of. Like USC, everybody in the early mid 2000s was talking about how that was a dynasty. And I think obviously it was. I mean, they played for, you can argue about it, but they played for their third straight national championship when they played Texas in 2005. And everybody was talking about how it's the greatest team of all time. And this is a dynasty and all that. And now think about what Saban's been able to do at Alabama. Like what Saban did and has done at Alabama is so amazing that what Pete Carroll did at USC almost seems insignificant. So regardless, those are two of the, big names in college football coaching in the last 20 years. And Steve Sarkisian's coached for both of them. And you look at those guys and their style, it's kind of two different styles. Pete Carroll's like this real laid back guy and always seems to be having fun when he's on the sideline. And then Nick Saban's like this really intense, very much into accountability, very much into this is the way you do it. This is the process, follow the process. And so I think for Sarkisian, he's obviously coached under both of those ways, both of those philosophies. And he's probably picked up really good things from both of those philosophies that he'll carry on throughout his coaching career. We talked a little bit about the recruiting before, those two top 5 classes. I think Steve Sarkisian's done okay in the transfer portal, which I think is – I think that's something that coaches are going to have to be really good at. I think going forward, you're going to have to be able to find these guys that can come in and contribute immediately and help your team because you're going to be losing guys every year. The days of guys coming in as freshmen and sticking around till they're juniors and maybe even seniors to play, that time is over. So you're going to lose players in the portal, and you're going to have to figure out a way to get players out of the portal to fill those needs. So I think the transfer portal game is going to be huge. And so far, if I had to grade Steve Sarkisian on that, I don't know. I'd probably give him a B, and I would give him a B because he's brought in like some really, really good talent, but most of it just hasn't panned out. You look at the two guys he brought in from Bama last year, Agiya Hall, and I can't even remember the tight end's name because he played like one snap the entire season. But both of those guys came in and just obviously didn't have their minds right or weren't what Steve Sarkisian is ultimately looking for, and they're already gone. They spent one football season with the University of Texas, didn't contribute anything, and they're gone. And then you got guys like Ovie Agofu, who his numbers won't jump off at you on the page, but he played quite a bit here at Texas as a transfer defensive end from Notre Dame. You got Keelan Robinson, who's probably been underutilized by Steve Sarkisian since he's been here. And that's not a dig at Steve Sarkisian. Steve Sarkisian has a lot of talent on the offensive side that he can use, and it's just impossible to get the ball into everybody's hands. But I think from a transfer perspective, Keelan Robinson's definitely been the biggest contributor. And so there's a lot of big names. Actually, there's not a lot of big names, but there's a couple of guys coming in this year. Jaden Catalon and I can't remember his name, the kid from Wake Forest. Jaden Catalon was a very highly recruited guy out of high school. I think this kid from Wake Forest was a guy that kind of developed late and has really become a really outstanding football player. But those guys got to come in and they got to play. Oh, by the way, the kid from Ohio State, actually two kids from Ohio State, Quinn Ewers, and the name escapes me, the big cornerback out of Ohio State. They both contributed, obviously, a lot last year. From a stats perspective, like none of those guys just blew you away. But they've taken a role in this team. So I think I got to give them a B plus maybe. If he can just get some of those guys he's brought in this year to be able to compete and continue to contribute, then I think that grade will kind of move up into an A. I really like Steve Sarkisian's approach to building culture. I think he's got that spot on. His whole idea is, here's what we're going to be. If you can't buy into it, you need to go. And that was completely evident as he, turned that roster over a couple of times. Not only did he lose some guys, and I say lose, he probably got rid of some guys when he first got here. But then after that first season, man, they just really rolled the roster over quite a bit. And we've seen a little bit of that at the end of this season with guys jumping into the transfer portal. But I don't think that was culture stuff. I think that was just, man, I'm not getting an opportunity to play here. I'm going to go play somewhere else. Or the coaching staff sitting down with guys and saying, man, we really appreciate what you've been doing. If you want to come back, we'll certainly be glad to have you, but you're probably not going to get that much playing time if you do come back. So I think the guys that left this year were not culture problems like the guys that had left the 2 off-season prior. Then you look at his record at Texas. It's not very good, 13-12. It is above 500. That's a positive, but Texas fans don't want to hear, hey, man, we're above 500. Texas fans want to be in that 85-90% range. And maybe that's unrealistic, but that's what Texas fans do. And I can say that because I've been a Texas fan my whole life, and we expect to win. And right now, you look at you look at what he's done on the field, and from a record perspective, and it's just not good enough at this point. I don't think there's any reason why Texas couldn't have competed and played in the Big 12 championship game last year. A lot of Texas fans will say that's crazy. To me, I thought the Big 12, I thought going into the season last year, the Big 12 was going to be fairly down, and I think it was. The surprise team was obviously TCU, and TCU really, if you look at their season and look at the games they played, there are a few plays one way or the other from being the same type of team as KSU and Texas were, honestly. So I really feel like there wasn't really a big top of the Big 12 last year like you're used to seeing in the Big 12. And there was just a lot of teams that were kind of, above average type teams, but really no really good teams. So certainly I thought going into last season, Texas had a decent shot at competing for making it to the Big 12 championship game. And they did going, pretty late into the season. But I thought they squandered a lot of opportunities. I think, if you look back, I think if you're Steve Sarkisian, you're looking back at that season and saying to yourself, man, we really blew an opportunity there. 2-8 against ranked teams. It's obviously not very good. Now they have played some really tough teams in that 10 games of ranked teams, but they've also played a lot of teams that they should have easily beat. A lot of blown double-digit leads in that 2-10 record. And that's something that happened a ton last year. I think it was 4 games in a row that they blew double-digit leads to lose the game. And then this year, we blew a double-digit lead against Tech on the road, blew a double-digit lead against Oklahoma State on the road. Didn't happen as much. It did happen on the road again against K-State, and they just happened to be able to pull it out. So there's that aspect of it. And I think, 1 or 2 times blowing a double-digit lead, your team blowing a double-digit lead, I think you can just kind of write that off as, that's going to happen. But I just rattled off 6 times in the last 2 seasons that they've blown double-digit leads. They got to fix that. He's got to figure out a way to do that. And I think part of it is he's the head coach and the offensive coordinator. And I think the offense in the second half of games last year, and especially those 2 that I mentioned, just really went AWOL. He got away from things that were working in lieu of other things with the lead, and I don't understand why. I think from a play calling perspective, he can be super creative and then just very vanilla. Like, the creative side of me, and I've talked about this on the podcast before. In that Oklahoma game, they ran 3 straight plays out of the same exact formation, same exact motion. The first play was a run-in play. The second play was a little throw out into the flat to the motion man who was motioning in and then motioning back out. And then the third play was a post for a touchdown to Xavier Worthy. So you see stuff like that and you go, man, this guy, his mind is really working. He took the same look 3 different times and ran 3 different plays out of it right in a row. And it was like a machine. And then you see games where it's like the game plan is drop back and throw the ball as far as you can down the field to Xavier Worthy. And so there's like these times where you and you heard, as Texas fans, we heard all about Steve Sarkisian and we know about the amazing offenses he had at Alabama. And man, I was super excited when he came and we've seen glimpses of that. And we've seen, to be fair, we've seen it quite a bit with Steve Sarkisian here. But the flip side of that coin is we've also seen the, absolute what the hell. We've seen him do things early in games offensively where like it looks like the team can't be stopped, and then he never goes back to him. Kind of alluded to it a minute ago. He's super stubborn with the deep ball. I think, his offense is predicated on getting the ball deep, stretching the defense, getting those safeties to back up so he can run the ball and then, really attack with that screen game. Problem is they have not been very good in 2 years at hitting the deep ball. Last year, 2 seasons ago, Hudson Card just couldn't hit them at all. And then Quinn Ewers starts out on absolute fire with the deep throws. And then he gets hurt and comes back and has an amazing game against Oklahoma. But then after that, it was like, what the hell? It's like a totally different guy. So part of me says I understand like your offense, that's what it's about. The other part of me says, you're not good at it. You're not even mediocre at it yet. Do what you got to do to win games. Which leads me to my next point. I think Steve Sarkisian got spoiled at Alabama in the running game. They were able to run over the top of just about any opponent. And so at Texas, when that doesn't happen, he abandons the run. If he doesn't get big plays in the running game, he'll just abandon the running game. And then you got games like Oklahoma State where they did get huge plays in the running game, and he still abandons the running game. That game was like criminal. Roschon Johnson and Bijan Robinson were dominating the Oklahoma State game. And at the end of the game, they hardly got any carries in the second half. And we threw the ball like 50 times with our freshman quarterback that was just, he wasn't playing good. He almost did it against Baylor, where the running game was decent. It wasn't great. And I think it took that turnover by Ewers, that fumble, to just snap him out of it and say, I've just got to run the ball. And they ran the hell out of the ball 3 drives in a row. I don't think they passed the ball a single time, scored 2 touchdowns, and then ran the clock out to win the game. He's got to get out of this mindset of the home run has to happen with the running game. We saw it against TCU. TCU sold out to stop the run. We all know that. They said, we're going to get downhill. We're not going to let Bijan Robinson beat us. And Bijan Robinson didn't have a good first half. But then in the second half, they completely abandoned the run in a very close game, which there was no reason to abandon the run. I understand if you're down 3 touchdowns, you can't run the ball into a brick wall over and over again if you're down 3 touchdowns and hope you pop them. But we're talking about a tight game. Overall, I think he's a good representative for Texas football. When he speaks, I like what he's saying. I think he's saying all the right things. I think he's really trying to build a culture at Texas. He's had amazing success as a coordinator, not so much as a head coach. He's like a 500 type guy, career-wise, as a head coach. I think 2023 is a make or break for Steve Sarkisian. I think he's obviously got this recruiting momentum. He's got 2 top 5 classes there. He's got his quarterback that he went out and wanted to get. He's got all these weapons offensively, and the defense has done a complete 180 since year 1. The defense is playing good. Sark has to get it done on the field in 2023, or you're going to lose capital with the fan base. You're going to start to have – there was guys turning on Steve Sarkisian last year. But if he doesn't really have a good season this year, there's going to be a lot more rational Texas fans that are going to start to have those thoughts about, what's next. You got to give a guy 3 years. Next year will be his 3rd year. You're going to start to have people talking about, well, if things don't happen in this 4th year, he's got to be gone. And back to the recruiting thing, he's obviously been able to recruit well at Texas. I wonder if he doesn't have sort of a breakout season next year, if he loses some of that momentum. You can only preach, this is where we're headed as a program. These are the things we're going to do. Come be a part of this. If you don't actually go out at some point and do it. And I think now is the time that Steve Sarkisian and the Texas Longhorns have to go out and do it. I think they're going to be a favorite to be in the Big 12 championship game next year. I think a lot of the media outlets will pick them as the favorite to win the Big 12 championship next year. We got to see if Steve Sarkisian can win 10 games, because I think that's what it'll take to win the Big 12. But it's his time. It's all out there in front of him. So that's what I think about Steve Sarkisian. I think there's a lot of good. I think there's a lot of question marks still. I want him to succeed very much because, again, I think he does a lot of things really well. I like the way he represents the program. I like the way he's able to go out and win these recruiting battles. But eventually you got to win on the field. And ultimately, that's what we all want to see as Texas fans. We want to see the team go out on the field and win games. We want to see the team play in New Year's Six bowls. We want to see this team be in the college football playoff and not only be there, but compete and be there at the end and maybe win one of those national championships again. So that's the Steve Sarkisian thoughts for the day. Bonus recruiting tidbit. Texas flipped TCU commit 4-star safety Warren Roberson. We talked about him a couple of weeks ago with Mike Roach, Horns 247 recruiting analyst, about how he was going to come in for a visit and how the Texas folks were real high on the fact that they thought he was going to flip. Well, he ended up signing his letter of intent last Wednesday and just waited for his announcement this week at school. So ultimately they were able to flip him. He's a 6 foot, 180 pound guy, 4-star, pretty high 4-star. I think he'll obviously, the Texas secondary is a place on that defense that's probably needs some help. And I think he might be one of those guys that can come in and help pretty quickly. So again, we talked about those recruiting battles. TCU just played in the national championship game. He's been committed to TCU since October. Texas was able to get in late and flip him. Subscribe to the podcast. Won't cost you a thing. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Won't cost you a thing. You can find me on TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, at all different kinds of variation of Horn Takes. If you search on any of those platforms for Horn Takes, you'll find me. You can email me at horntakespodcast@gmail.com with all your comments, questions, criticisms, and concerns. I love them all. Welcome.